We could begin, but we might have to stop when she arrives, so
Okay.
I hope you don't mind.
In fact, I was curious about how you came to China, to do science.
Right.
Because it seems that most Chinese people they choose to go to America to do science, but on the contract you came to China. So may I use this?
Yeah, of course. We'll need that. Yeah, it was. It was a long decision in the making. As you know, I was an assistant professor at the University of Virginia. And I was there for 7 years. And when I first arrived, so my specialty is in organic chemistry, organic synthesis, and to some extent medicinal chemistry, but really on the organic synthesis part. And when I arrived at Virginia that was a strength of that department. It's a relatively small department, but we had some very big names in the field, James Marshall and Sid Hecht, and we had some young up-and-comers, Milton Brown, and some other experienced people, Glenn McGarvey, and of course Lin Pu, who's on the boundary of organometallic and organic chemistry. And so it was a very exciting place to be there. They had brand new research building, good facilities. And in my first couple of years, I was getting students. I had one of my best friends from grad school who left with the master's to follow some other pursuits and then wanted to come back for his PhD, worked for me. So it was within those first couple of years, it was really a good time. And then the economic crisis hit.
Economic crisis?
Yeah, and so funding became very difficult for everyone. And at the same time, Jim Marshall, who was one of the leaders in the field, he retired. Sid Hecht moved to Arizona State University. Milton Brown, who's one of these young up-and-comers, went to head up the cancer center at Georgetown. And so our 3 big draws for graduate students in organic chemistry were gone. And my 3rd year, we only had 2 organic grad students come.
Okay. And
4th year, only 1 for the whole department. So, as you know, for a young professor, it's very difficult to survive when you don't have students coming in. There's a challenge with funding and there's a challenge with getting students. And, organic chemistry was dying at University of Virginia. And the only one who was really able to stay afloat and bring in organic students was Lin Pu. And the reason he was able to do it was because of his connections with China. He was able to bring in students from here during that time. And I would go to lunch with him frequently and we'd talk about this, and I say, I'd really like to get some better connections with China because I see how your group is doing. So couple that with the fact that I'm an educator. That is my main. I like to teach.
Okay.
Right, and I like to teach at a high level. Research is important. I feel that's part of the teaching experience. But my main focus is education and teaching, and the employment situation in America for my field of chemistry was very challenging. Right, many of the pharmaceutical companies were pushing their early drug development and synthesis off to other places like here in China. And more people were losing their jobs because of acquisitions and everything. So I was essentially training my students in something that they were going to have a very hard time getting a job in. And they would be competing with people who were much more experienced in the field, had a lot more experience in the pharmaceutical and medicinal chemistry. So it didn't feel right that I was educating people in something that they couldn't do more of there. And that's not the case in China. This is, like I said, most of the jobs are coming here. And so holding on to students here is the hard part because they want to get a job right away and go off, which is the opposite situation. So a lot of that compiled together. Now Virginia's been able to recover, but not in organic chemistry. They've moved in other directions.
Okay.
And so in catalysis and in astrochemistry and bioanalytical chemistry, they're a small department, and basically organic chemistry used to be a strength, now it's not. and they have other strengths. So I moved somewhere where organic chemistry is a strength. And certainly within Sichuan University, it's one of the strongest organic departments in the country, if not the world. Certainly one of the most, as far as publications, number of publications and citations is concerned, it's one of the strongest in the country. So that was one of the reasons to come here, of course, right? I wanted to go where my skills would be useful and I could work on a team towards the same goal instead of trying to fight for my existence.
Okay. It's my first time to know that as CEO it has a strength on organic chemistry.
Organic
because
and polymer
I'm not.
chemistry.
My major is international journalism.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So organic and polymer chemistry are the two strengths in this university. I've got the polymer science department as well as here. Wang Yuzhong was just admitted to the Academy of Engineers in China, and of course we've got Feng Xiaoming, who is an Academy member, and he does organic chemistry and asymmetric catalysis. So those are, having those two pillars within the college help build the strength off of it. And our dean, Yu Xiaoqi, is starting to bring in more chemical biology people, and he's even set up a space within there. So once that's always been a desire of mine, is to get into that field. I've worked with collaborators a lot, and even in Virginia I was working with collaborators. But the current climate in America is if you can't do it yourself, then you're not going to survive. And so now that we have some of those facilities here, if I can find the students and some of the people to train them, that's certainly going to be an area we'd love to go into. It's not just making molecules, but testing them and doing the testing on their own. Right now, I still have to rely on collaborators, and it's even harder to find them here for that type of work.
So do you mean your collaborators are not in China, but
I
places?
have two collaborators at Kunming University of Science and Technology that I gave some compounds to for testing. Yeah. But most of my work has moved away from the biology, though I'd love to move back to it. Like I said, it's just been easier to do the synthesis here. And so I have some collaborators. I have, one of my colleagues over at the med school at Huaxi.
Huaxi Hospital?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they have a large chemistry department over there as well. And so I interact with some of them. We're working on, in fact, I'm writing a review article right now with one of them. And I have Patrick Walsh at University of Pennsylvania is another collaborator of mine. We're working on a paper together right now as well. But that's all in synthesis. That's all, not the medicinal chemistry part. So. Okay.
So could you tell me something about your research? You just said your research is referring to it is related to biology, right?
To some extent, yeah. What my group fundamentally does and what we've really specialized in now is in synthetic methodology. Okay. And we focused on and since you're not a chemistry major, some of these terms might not be as important or useful, but we focused a lot on developing new methods around what's called the 2-aza-al anion. Unique ways of generating this intermediate and then using it for the synthesis of lots of interesting compounds. Many of these compounds finding their way into the backbone of pharmaceutical and biologically active natural products. So what got me interested in that field of synthetic chemistry was an interest in biology, knowing, okay, there's these types of compounds that have these types of biological activity. Okay. So it got me interested, okay, how can I make those types of compounds? Right? So biology is what got me interested, the medicinal chemistry aspect. And the more I started doing the method, and the more success I got on that, the harder it is to get back into the thing that got me inspired in it in the first place. And a lot of the students here want to do the synthesis. It's a lot easier to publish a paper quickly
to what?
Synthesis, synthetic methodology or methods. If you discover a new method or some modification of an old method, that's easier and faster to do than trying to find a new drug.
Okay.
Right? So that finding a new drug, begins after 5 years, and then it's 20 more years to get it to the market. So I mean that's a challenge, and grad students have a heart. They don't.
So, but it's more challenging to find a new method, right?
It's not necessarily more challenging. It's certainly more challenging to find a new drug, right?
Okay.
What I'm saying is finding new methods is, I wouldn't say easier because people, have a challenge, but it certainly requires less time to do it. And most of the grad students that are here are interested in those types of questions. Right? That's what they want to do.
I think I thought it was more challenging to develop a new method, but just according to your description, it's not.
Well, there's my wife right there. Here, let me. Laurel, look! I'm in the window. No, look down. Okay, there we go. This one. Alright. You might have to pause it as I let her in. No, I mean, for new synthetic methods, certainly in comparison to finding something that's useful and biologically active, finding a new synthetic method is easy, especially for me, because that's my specialty. So you could pause it. I'll be right back if you just want to wait here. I'll go get her.